What if one of the most influential people in the world, someone known for shaping industries and igniting revolutions, suddenly found himself in the crosshairs of the law? What if, in the blink of an eye, his empire seemed to crumble, all because of a few words typed out on Twitter? Elon Musk, the billionaire entrepreneur behind companies like Tesla and SpaceX, had always lived in the public eye. His Twitter account alone could move markets, spark debates, and even change the course of history. But now, his words were about to get him into serious trouble. It all started with a tweet. Elon Musk had always been a master of controversy, and his recent tweet was no different. The message, which was a little too casual and a lot too ambiguous, sent investors into a frenzy. Musk had implied that Tesla was considering taking itself private at a significant premium to its stock price. The result? A media storm of catastrophic proportions. Tesla going private at $420. Funding secured, the tweet read. In an instant, the stock price soared, and investors scrambled to make decisions based on Musk's words. But it wasn't long before the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, started sniffing around, wondering if Musk had broken the rules by misleading investors with an unverified statement. What followed was a massive legal showdown, one that would see Musk not only facing the SEC's scrutiny but also a potential fine that could derail his entire financial empire. The court case, which would later go down in history as a bizarre mix of legal tension and social media chaos, had started. Musk had been fined $20 million, and Tesla was hit with a fine of its own. But Musk, ever the fearless iconoclast, wasn't taking this lying down. He had one idea in mind: to turn the courtroom into his personal meme battlefield. But how could a court case be turned into a meme war? This is where it got interesting. Unlike any other high-profile case, this one was about to become a spectacle, and Elon Musk knew it. The courtroom, the lawyers, the entire legal system, none of it mattered to him as much as how the world was watching. He wasn't just going to pay the fine and walk away. He was going to make sure the entire world knew that the fine wasn't a punishment. No, it was part of a much larger game, and he was in control of the rules. It was in the days following the court's announcement of the fine that Musk's true intentions began to take shape. Rather than simply making a statement or holding a press conference to address the situation, Musk did what only he could do. He tweeted again. This time, it wasn't just a casual remark or another cryptic message. It was a full-on attack. Just got fined $20 million by the SEC. But hey, it was worth it. The court thinks I should cease and desist, but that's just too boring. Watch me turn this into something fun. And that's when it all started. Musk's supporters were quick to latch on to the tweet. Within hours, memes began flooding the internet. People joked about the fine being Musk's ticket to another Tesla Model S giveaway. Others were quick to suggest that the SEC had just handed Musk the keys to a new marketing strategy. Elon Musk, the man who turned a lawsuit into a viral campaign. The memes were funny, clever, and above all, powerful. Musk had just turned what could have been a career-derailing moment into an opportunity to engage with his followers in a way no one else could have. To his millions of fans, the fine wasn't a setback, it was the beginning of something new. It was like watching a master at work, manipulating the very fabric of public opinion to fit his own agenda. But as the meme spread, the media began to take notice. Some outlets were furious. They saw Musk's behavior as an insult to the legal process, as a way to undermine the seriousness of the case. Others, however, saw Musk as a genius, a man who understood the power of social media and was using it to his advantage. At first, the court and the SEC weren't sure how to react. They expected Musk to apologize, to quietly accept his punishment and move on. But that wasn't Musk's style. Instead, he decided to do what he did best: disrupt everything. While the court hearings were ongoing, Musk continued to tweet out memes, each one more outrageous than the last. Some were directed at the SEC itself, others at the media who were making a spectacle of the trial. But all of them were calculated moves in what could only be described as a meme war. As the days passed, it became clear that Musk wasn't just trying to minimize the fallout from the fine. He was amplifying it. Every meme he posted seemed to gather more attention. Some even claimed that Musk's social media savvy had turned the case into a pop culture event. Soon enough, people weren't just talking about his fine, they were talking about the memes, the chaos, and the fact that Musk was using the legal system to create an entirely new form of protest. And then came the unexpected. The court, which had originally planned to issue a ruling on the fine, suddenly found itself in a media frenzy. Instead of talking about Musk's alleged violations of securities laws, the world was now discussing how he had turned the courtroom into a stage for his own digital war. By the time the case reached its next major hearing, Musk had already made his point. It wasn't about the fine anymore. It was about who controlled the narrative. And in a world dominated by social media, Elon Musk was showing that he was the one holding all the cards. But what was Musk's endgame? Did he really care about the fine, or was this all just part of a much larger play to prove a point, to demonstrate that no matter how much the system tried to hold him down, he could always rise above it? Could Musk truly turn the legal system into a joke, or was he crossing a line that even he couldn't come back from? As the courtroom drama unfolded, one thing was certain: the world was watching, and no one could predict how this bizarre clash of law, media, and memes would end. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Like so many iconic figures, his rise to fame was anything but predictable. He grew up in Pretoria, South Africa, with a mother who was a model and a nutritionist, and a father who was a successful electromechanical engineer. His parents, though smart and driven, weren't particularly wealthy, and Musk's early years were far from luxurious. In fact, the young Elon often found himself alone, diving into books and later, computers, to escape the isolation he felt from the world around him. At the age of 12, Musk created and sold a video game called Blaster for $500. It wasn't the success that would make him rich, but it was the beginning of a pattern. Musk always found a way to turn his curiosity into something tangible. Whether it was learning about rockets or reading physics books, he had an insatiable thirst for knowledge. It was this drive that led him to the United States. He left South Africa to study at Queen's University in Canada, later transferring to the University of Pennsylvania. Little did anyone know, this young man with a vision was about to change the world. Musk's early days in America were rough. He had to work multiple jobs to make ends meet while attending school. It was during this time that he had the first seeds of his entrepreneurial spirit, founding Zip2, an online software company with his brother Kimball. Zip2 sold for nearly $300 million, but Musk was far from satisfied. This wasn't the life he wanted. He didn't want to just make money, he wanted to make history. In 1999, Musk co-founded X.com, an online payment company that would later become PayPal. The company's success skyrocketed, and in just a few short years, Musk was a billionaire. But even as his wealth grew, Musk remained obsessed with bigger goals, goals that could potentially change humanity's future. And that's how Tesla and SpaceX came into the picture. Tesla Motors was founded in 2003 by engineers Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning, but it was Musk who saw the potential for electric vehicles to revolutionize the automotive industry. Musk joined the company as a major investor and took the role of chairman. In 2008, he became CEO and product architect, and under his leadership, Tesla became synonymous with electric cars. The world now knew Musk as the man who could transform entire industries, one innovation at a time. Then came SpaceX, Musk's lifelong dream. Founded in 2002, SpaceX's mission was clear: to make space travel affordable and to eventually colonize Mars. While SpaceX initially faced numerous setbacks, including failed launches and heavy financial losses, Musk's determination paid off. In 2008, SpaceX successfully launched its Falcon 1 rocket, and by 2012, it became the first private company to send a spacecraft to the International Space Station. Musk had now set his sights on Mars. However, despite his growing success in both automotive and space exploration, Musk's personality remained controversial. He was known for his bold ideas, eccentric behavior, and often brash manner. His ambitions seemed endless. He dreamed of a future where humanity could survive on multiple planets, a future where electric vehicles weren't just the norm but the solution to climate change. He was a visionary, but his approach was often perceived as reckless by those around him. And then, there was his social media presence. Twitter, in particular, became Musk's megaphone. It wasn't just a platform for him to announce new product launches or share updates about Tesla and SpaceX. Musk used Twitter to voice his unfiltered opinions on everything, from stock prices to politics to his own critics. Some loved his bold, often comical tweets. Others found them reckless and unpredictable. But one thing was undeniable: when Musk spoke, the world listened. In fact, Musk's influence on the stock market became so significant that it raised concerns. His tweets had the power to send stock prices soaring or crashing, all depending on the message. This brought him under increasing scrutiny by financial regulators, especially the SEC. As Musk's empire grew, so did the number of people who sought to challenge him. His unconventional methods made him a lightning rod for both admiration and criticism. Some saw him as a genius, a modern-day Tony Stark. Others viewed him as a man who was too ambitious for his own good, someone willing to take enormous risks, both for himself and for the companies he led. His fans loved him for his boldness, while his critics saw him as arrogant, untouchable, and occasionally, reckless. But even amidst this praise and criticism, Musk's reputation was built on one thing: he always moved forward. Every obstacle seemed like a stepping stone to him. If Tesla faced production delays, Musk found a way to make the company more efficient. If SpaceX failed a launch, he pushed forward, learning from each failure. In fact, many of Musk's major breakthroughs came from moments when everything seemed to be falling apart. His willingness to risk it all became part of his appeal. But this all changed with the SEC fine, which marked a turning point in Musk's approach to the media, to his critics, and even to the very public image he had carefully crafted. Musk's decision to tweet about his fine was far from spontaneous. It was a calculated move. In many ways, the fine didn't surprise Musk. It was a consequence of his actions, yes, but it was also a game that he knew how to play. And the game, as far as he was concerned, was about perception. In a world where public opinion could make or break a business, Musk understood better than anyone that controlling the narrative was just as important as having a groundbreaking product or service. The media, once obsessed with his every move, had now become his stage. Musk was no longer just the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, he was a brand. And his brand was synonymous with disruption. It was in the aftermath of the fine that Musk began to change the entire narrative of the trial. Instead of the fine being a symbol of his defeat, he turned it into a symbol of his defiance. He wasn't going to just accept the penalty and move on. He was going to own it. The media, still unsure of how to handle Musk's behavior, began to focus less on the legal implications and more on the spectacle he was creating. What began as a legal proceeding quickly morphed into a media circus, and Musk was the ringmaster. But what was the endgame? Was this all part of some larger plan? Could Musk really turn a courtroom drama into a global cultural event? It was in these early stages of the trial that Musk's ultimate goal began to become clear. He wasn't fighting for his reputation, he was fighting to redefine the very nature of what it meant to be a billionaire CEO in the age of social media. And the world was watching, waiting for the next move in what was becoming one of the most unconventional legal battles in modern history. The fine had been issued. The SEC had declared that Musk had misled investors with his infamous, funding-secured tweet. Tesla's stock had jumped, the market was thrown into chaos, and now, the courts were involved. Musk had been slapped with a hefty $20 million fine, and Tesla, the company he had built from the ground up, had been fined another $20 million. The media outlets reported on the news with their usual flurry of headlines, and the public, ever the spectators, watched as one of the most infamous figures in the tech world seemingly stumbled. But here's where it all took a turn that no one expected. Elon Musk wasn't about to fade into the background. Rather than offering an apology or publicly admitting any wrongdoing, Musk did what he did best: he took control of the narrative. Musk wasn't just going to sit back and let the media paint him as the villain of the story. He had built his empire on the foundation of disruption and innovation, and this legal battle was no different. With the trial still ongoing, Musk fired off another tweet that would send the media into a frenzy: "Just got fined $20 million. Thanks, SEC, for helping me with a marketing campaign. I've never been more hyped for the next Tesla launch. Hashtag Tesla is my playground." The tweet wasn't just a joke. It was a declaration, a move that would immediately shift the conversation away from legal troubles and back to Musk's mastery of social media. The world was already used to seeing Musk as a provocateur, a maverick who didn't follow the traditional rules of business, but now, he was directly challenging the very authority that sought to control him. For the SEC, the situation was becoming more complicated. They had originally thought that Musk would comply, quietly pay the fine, and move on. But instead, Musk was making their penalty feel like an afterthought. He was elevating the situation, making the entire event into a spectacle. And in doing so, he was dragging the SEC, and the media, into a game they hadn't anticipated. Musk was turning a legal storm into an opportunity for exposure. The courtroom, instead of being a place of legal proceedings, was rapidly becoming a stage for a performance. Every court date was covered by the media. Every development in the case was amplified on Twitter. The SEC might have thought they were punishing Musk, but instead, they were fueling his fire. Meanwhile, Tesla's stock began to bounce back, largely because of the way Musk was handling the situation. Investors, who had initially been rattled by the news of the fine, were now watching in awe as Musk seemed to turn the crisis into yet another marketing triumph. It was as if the fine had only cemented Musk's position as a fearless leader who couldn't be knocked down. But the real magic was in the memes. Within hours of Musk's tweet, meme creators, internet trolls, and fans alike jumped into the fray. The fine was now a joke. It wasn't a burden, it was a punchline. The memes ranged from clever images mocking the SEC to exaggerated depictions of Musk as a superhero who had come out victorious in a battle against the forces of authority. One of the most popular memes was a photoshopped image of Musk dressed as a knight, riding a Tesla while holding a sword that had SEC written on it. The caption read, "Elon Musk, defending the kingdom of innovation, one lawsuit at a time." The internet couldn't get enough. It was like watching an entire world come together to defend Musk, even if they didn't fully understand the legalities of the case. What they saw was a man who refused to be controlled, a billionaire who could face down even the highest authorities and still come out on top. For many, Musk's defiance became a symbol of fighting back against systems of power that they felt were stifling progress. But while the memes continued to flood social media, the situation wasn't all fun and games. The SEC wasn't amused. The agency had issued a statement, claiming that Musk's behavior was undermining the seriousness of the investigation. The legal proceedings continued, and Musk's legal team was now preparing for what could be a long and drawn-out battle. Musk wasn't going to just roll over, he was going to fight this. Musk's tweet about the fine, and the meme frenzy that followed, had now created a massive ripple effect across the world of business, media, and law. The SEC, which had hoped to impose a simple punishment and move on, now found itself in a standoff with Musk. They had no idea that this fine would trigger such an unpredictable sequence of events, nor did they realize how adept Musk was at manipulating public perception to his advantage. The media began to take sides. Some outlets were critical of Musk's actions, accusing him of mocking the system. Others, however, saw the fine as an unjust penalty, a system that couldn't understand Musk's drive to innovate. The more Musk leaned into the meme culture, the more his supporters rallied behind him. It was clear now that Musk wasn't just a business mogul, he was a cultural icon, a symbol of rebellion against the norm. And that's when it hit, Musk had redefined the narrative of the fine, turning it from a punishment into an opportunity. The SEC had given him a fine, but he was the one making the headlines. He was the one controlling the story. The legal battle was just beginning, but one thing was clear: Musk had already won the public relations war. By the time the first few weeks of the court proceedings passed, something remarkable had begun to happen. What was supposed to be a routine legal battle between a billionaire CEO and the Securities and Exchange Commission had turned into an all-out spectacle. The media coverage escalated, but it wasn't just the financial world that was watching. No, it was much more than that. Each new development, each new court date, brought with it a fresh wave of online reactions. From Tesla fans to internet meme creators, it seemed everyone had an opinion, and they weren't shy about sharing it. As Musk leaned more into the meme culture, he was able to distance himself from the traditional narrative of a corporate villain and instead cast himself as a hero fighting against the establishment. This wasn't just a legal case, it was a battle for freedom, for innovation, and for the future. Musk's social media accounts became battlegrounds where every tweet, every Instagram post, was followed with the intensity of a live broadcast. His followers, who had already been enamored by his unfiltered personality, now saw him as something more, a symbol of resistance. The memes didn't stop at just images of Musk as a knight or superhero. Soon, elaborate videos surfaced on TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter, each one showing Musk triumphantly dodging the legal system's arrows. There were even clips of him photoshopped into epic movie scenes, like the battle in Avengers: Endgame, with the SEC painted as the villainous Thanos, and Musk as the heroic Tony Stark. The captions were equally clever, often mixing humor with sharp commentary on the corporate world and the government's regulatory powers. One particularly viral video, titled "Musk vs. the SEC, the Battle of the Century," garnered millions of views. It portrayed Musk in a fast-paced, action-packed sequence where he dodged regulatory fines and launched rockets into space, with the SEC's office building in the background, representing an outdated system trying to hold him back. The video's catchy line, "The future cannot be fined," became a rallying cry among Musk's fans. This media frenzy didn't just fuel public opinion, it was creating a new kind of legal narrative, one where the power of the meme was shifting the way people saw Musk and his legal situation. During one of the court sessions, Musk's legal team had prepared a defense that was nothing short of bold. Musk, ever the showman, had decided that his testimony would not be delivered in the typical way. Instead of the usual lawyer-led arguments and prepared statements, Musk took the stand and turned it into something different. The courtroom was packed, reporters were buzzing, and cameras were rolling. "Let's talk about what really matters here," Musk said, his voice loud and confident as he addressed the court. "I'm not here to apologize for speaking my mind. I'm here because the world needs to understand the importance of pushing boundaries. The fine? It's just a reminder of how out of touch some people are with the future. The memes, the laughter, the creative rebellion, they're the real story here. I'm not going to be silenced by a fine. I'm going to take this court and turn it into a movement." The room fell silent for a moment. No one had expected Musk to take such a bold, unapologetic approach. It wasn't just about defending his actions, it was about standing his ground and challenging the very idea of authority. Musk's words sent shockwaves through the media, and the meme makers wasted no time capitalizing on the moment. Within minutes, internet users flooded social media with their own versions of Musk's bold statement, turning his court appearance into the latest viral sensation. One meme showed Musk's face over the famous "This is fine" dog from the internet meme, only this time, the dog was wearing a spacesuit and sitting in a rocket, while the SEC's logo burned in the background. The caption read, "Musk in court, still launching rockets, still changing the world." As the memes continued to flood the internet, the SEC found itself in an increasingly difficult position. The agency had expected to quell Musk's rebellious tendencies with the fine, but now, they were facing a storm they couldn't control. What was supposed to be a legal confrontation over a simple misstatement had turned into a global phenomenon, with Musk not only escaping the fines with minimal damage to his reputation but turning the entire situation into a PR triumph. The mainstream media outlets began to pick up on the strange dynamic that was unfolding. Major financial networks and legal commentators weighed in on the case, acknowledging the unprecedented nature of Musk's response. Musk wasn't simply fighting the SEC, he was reshaping the way the public viewed authority and rebellion in the business world. But it wasn't just about the memes. There was something more profound happening. The legal proceedings, once seen as a form of punishment, were now serving as a platform for Musk to broadcast his message to the world. The traditional power structures that governed the corporate world were being called into question, and Musk, with his indomitable will and meme-powered platform, was leading the charge. Musk had created a new form of resistance, one that wasn't just about fighting authority, but about reimagining what authority could look like in the modern world. He had already proven that he could disrupt industries like automotive, energy, and space travel. Now, he was proving that he could disrupt the legal system itself, all while turning a fine into the ultimate social media marketing campaign. And as the case continued, it became more and more clear that this was no ordinary lawsuit. This wasn't about one man facing the SEC, it was about the future of how corporations, social media, and government regulators interacted in a world that was increasingly dominated by digital culture. The legal battle between Elon Musk and the SEC had escalated beyond anyone's expectations. What had started as a seemingly routine fine for misleading investors had turned into a full-fledged media spectacle, with Musk using his skills as a master of social media and public relations to twist the situation to his advantage. The memes were flowing in a tidal wave, and public opinion was on his side. But the true test was still ahead. As the court date for the final ruling loomed, something strange began to happen. Musk's bravado had begun to wear on the SEC, and they started to take a more aggressive stance. The agency's lawyers had been scrambling to find ways to deal with Musk's unapologetic attitude, and each new court appearance seemed to push them further into a corner. The final day of the trial arrived, and the atmosphere in the courtroom was electric. The press had packed the room, and for the first time, even international media outlets were covering the event. Cameras were positioned to capture every movement, every word. It felt as if the entire world was waiting for Musk to either bow to the pressure or to rise even higher. Elon Musk, ever the master of the moment, walked into the courtroom wearing his trademark casual attire, jeans, a black jacket, and his usual self-assured smile. It was a look that signified both confidence and defiance. But this time, Musk wasn't just there to make jokes or create memes. There was something more at stake now. This was no longer just about a fine. This was about his future, the future of Tesla, and the growing influence of social media culture on business and law. As Musk's legal team prepared to present their defense one last time, the courtroom fell into an unexpected silence. Musk stood up from his seat and, with an air of quiet confidence, walked to the center of the room. He wasn't wearing his usual cocky smile. Instead, his face was focused, his eyes intense. "I want to make one thing clear," Musk began, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. "I've never been one to follow rules that don't make sense. The fine, the SEC, the lawyers, they're all part of an outdated system that's holding back progress. They want to paint me as a villain. They want to say I'm a risk to the market. But all I've ever done is innovate. I've disrupted industries, changed the world, and pushed humanity forward." The room was still, but you could feel the weight of Musk's words. He wasn't just speaking to the court, he was speaking to the entire world. "I don't apologize for shaking things up," Musk continued. "And I certainly don't apologize for creating a new kind of narrative. The world doesn't need more of the same old corporate nonsense. It needs risk-takers. It needs people who aren't afraid to stand up to the system. I am who I am because I've never been afraid to challenge what's been done before." The fine? It's a small price to pay for progress. The air in the courtroom shifted. It wasn't just a defiant statement anymore. It was an emotional climax. Musk was laying himself bare, not just as a CEO, but as a symbol of resistance. He was painting himself as the underdog in a fight against an entrenched system, an individual up against the machinery of bureaucracy. For the first time in the entire trial, there was a sense of empathy in the room. The very thing the SEC had been trying to do by imposing the fine, to humble Musk and force him into submission, was now backfiring. Instead of looking defeated, Musk had transformed the situation into a triumph of spirit. Musk's words reverberated through the room, and even the journalists in the back of the courtroom seemed to be taking notes with more fervor than ever before. It was clear, Musk wasn't just defending himself anymore. He was standing up for something much larger. The truth is, Musk said, his tone softening, we can't expect progress if we're too busy protecting the old systems that are already failing. I didn't start Tesla to play by the rules. I started it to make history. And if a fine is the price I have to pay to continue making that history, then I'll gladly pay it. But the world is watching, and I believe that if we stand together, if we embrace the future, we'll change things for good. There was a pause as the court absorbed Musk's final words. It felt like the moment stretched into eternity. Then, the silence was broken by the soft click of a gavel. The judge, who had been sitting stoically through the trial, now leaned forward and looked directly at Musk. His voice was calm, but the weight of his next words was immense. Mr. Musk, the judge began, you have made your position clear. This court will deliberate on your words and actions. However, it is important to understand that this case is not just about a fine or your tweets. It is about accountability, transparency, and the responsibility that comes with influence. Your words, your actions, have inspired many, but they have also raised questions that go beyond the legal realm. Musk stood still, his eyes locked on the judge, his mind clearly racing. The moment was almost cinematic, as if the entire world were waiting for the resolution. We will reconvene in 1 week for the final ruling, the judge said, signaling the end of the hearing. And just like that, the tension in the courtroom dissipated. The media burst into action, scrambling to get their final comments before the case was adjourned. As Musk exited the courtroom, the memes started again. But this time, they weren't just jokes. They were messages, powerful statements about defiance, about innovation, and about what it meant to be a modern-day rebel. The internet buzzed with reactions. Musk was more than just a tech mogul, he was a revolutionary. In that moment, the legal battle seemed almost trivial compared to the larger story at play. Musk had transformed the very nature of public discourse. He had shown the world that sometimes, the best weapon wasn't money or power, it was the ability to shape the narrative. The week following the emotional climax in court felt like an eternity. The media frenzy had only grown more intense, with every outlet in the world eager to report the outcome of Elon Musk's unprecedented stand against the SEC. His words, his defiance, were still reverberating in the air, and no one, least of all Musk, knew what the final ruling would be. But one thing was certain, the stakes had grown far beyond the scope of a simple fine. The courtroom was once again packed when the day of the ruling arrived. Journalists from across the globe filled every available seat, their pens poised, their cameras at the ready. For the first time in the history of corporate legal disputes, there was an undeniable sense of anticipation in the air. The tension was palpable. Musk wasn't just fighting for his company, Tesla, he was fighting for something far larger, the freedom to challenge the system. He had come to realize something profound, the world wasn't watching just to see if he would win or lose. They were watching to see how he would redefine the very nature of success, rebellion, and influence. And in this moment, the future seemed to hang in the balance. The judge walked into the courtroom, and the room fell silent. Everyone rose as the judge took his seat, signaling the start of the final proceedings. Mr. Musk, the judge began, his voice steady and deliberate, this court has considered your testimony, your behavior, and the broader implications of this case. The law must be upheld, but the context in which this case has played out is unlike anything we have seen before. The entire courtroom was on edge. Musk's legal team exchanged looks, knowing that the ruling would be a pivotal moment. The stakes were higher than they had ever imagined. The judge paused, his gaze shifting between Musk and the sea of reporters. After careful consideration, this court has decided to impose a revised fine, far lower than the original one. Additionally, while your actions were irresponsible, this court acknowledges the unique position you hold in the public sphere. Your statements and actions have undoubtedly shaped the global conversation surrounding business, technology, and regulation. A murmur swept through the courtroom. The audience was expecting either a larger penalty or, perhaps, a more punitive judgment. Instead, the reduced fine came as a surprising turn of events. Musk's defiant stance had worked. The SEC, in a sense, had been forced to back down. But the real shock came when the judge added the final words of the ruling. Moreover, we are recommending that you work with the SEC to create a new set of guidelines for social media use by CEOs and public figures. The world is changing, and so must the systems that govern it. The judge wasn't just acknowledging Musk's influence, he was suggesting that Musk could help shape the very framework that would govern social media and corporate conduct in the future. This wasn't just a legal victory, it was a nod to the new age of business, where digital platforms and influencers held unprecedented power. As the ruling was delivered, Musk's face softened. There was no cocky smile, no boastful tweet to follow. For the first time in the entire ordeal, Musk seemed almost humbled. "Thank you," Musk said, his voice calm, but carrying a weight that could only come from the realization that this case wasn't just about him anymore. "We're all in this together. Let's build something better." The media erupted into chaos as Musk's words reverberated across the globe. Headlines poured in, "Musk wins against SEC, but the real victory is yet to come." And in a way, that was true. The ruling wasn't just about Musk escaping the financial penalty, it was about the transformation of the business landscape. By redefining the relationship between corporations, social media, and the public, Musk had turned his court case into a defining moment of the modern business world. But as the dust settled, something became clear: this wasn't the end of the conflict. No, the ruling had sparked a new chapter, one that would involve not just Musk, but every major corporation and public figure who had ever used social media to shape their brand. In the weeks that followed, Musk and his team began working with the SEC to craft new guidelines for social media use by CEOs. The project was controversial, with some business leaders praising Musk for his initiative and others criticizing him for potentially compromising the power of corporate autonomy. But one thing was certain: Musk was at the center of the conversation, once again challenging the status quo. Meanwhile, the meme war raged on. The internet, never one to let a cultural moment pass without turning it into content, continued to create memes that celebrated Musk's victory. The memes evolved, however, no longer just poking fun at the situation but now illustrating Musk's role as a pioneer of the digital age. One popular meme featured Musk sitting in a throne made of Twitter birds, holding a crown made of SpaceX rockets, with the caption, "King of the Meme Wars, and the Future of Business." But even as Musk basked in his newly elevated status, there were those who weren't convinced by his newfound reputation. Critics argued that Musk was merely leveraging his power for personal gain and that the guidelines he was helping to shape could potentially be used to cement his influence over public discourse in ways that could stifle competitors. The battle for control of social media and public opinion was far from over. Musk was learning that, sometimes, the real challenge wasn't just in winning the battle, it was in handling the aftermath. As the dust settled from Musk's courtroom victory, the implications of the ruling began to unfold. The judge's suggestion that Musk work with the SEC to develop new guidelines for social media use by CEOs was more than just a footnote, it was a call to arms for an entirely new kind of business regulation. The tech world, once a wild frontier where rules were either non-existent or loosely enforced, was now being forced to adapt to the realities of the digital age. And Musk, as controversial and divisive as he was, had found himself at the center of this massive shift. While many saw Musk's involvement in shaping the future of corporate social media regulation as a progressive move, others viewed it with skepticism. Was this a genuine effort to modernize the business world, or was Musk simply securing his own position as the dominant figure in the intersection of tech, media, and business? The answer wasn't so simple. Musk's new role in the creation of social media guidelines quickly became a subject of intense debate. On one hand, many applauded Musk for taking the lead. His message was clear: the old systems were broken, and the people who had the most power in today's world were the ones shaping the conversation online. Social media wasn't just a tool for communication, it had become the battleground for influence. "We need to rewrite the rules," Musk said during one of his first public addresses after the ruling. CEOs and public figures must have the freedom to express their views, but they also need to be held accountable. The lines between personal and professional, entertainment and business, are more blurred than ever before. That's why we need to create clear standards for digital behavior, not just for individuals, but for entire industries. The media reacted with a mix of enthusiasm and suspicion. Musk, the king of Twitter, was now positioning himself as the architect of a new order. "The reality is," Musk continued, "business is no longer confined to the boardroom. It's in our pockets. It's on our screens. We need to have better standards for how we engage with our audience. I'm not talking about censorship, I'm talking about accountability." Musk's comments set the tone for the discussions that would follow. He wasn't just advocating for freedom of speech, he was calling for a new form of corporate responsibility. One where leaders, rather than hiding behind corporate walls, were forced to face the consequences of their digital actions, whether they were posting a tweet, sharing a meme, or making an off-the-cuff remark that could send their company's stock prices soaring or plummeting. But not everyone was on board. Skeptics, many from the traditional business world, saw Musk's proposal as dangerous. "This is nothing but a way for Musk to consolidate his control over both the media and the tech industry," said one prominent corporate strategist in a public interview. "He's trying to make himself the standard bearer for an entire generation of CEOs, and that's a risky proposition. The last thing we need is one person, no matter how charismatic or influential, setting the tone for an entire industry." The backlash came not only from the corporate sector but also from the general public. Critics of Musk's approach argued that his willingness to blur the lines between personal expression and business was a dangerous precedent. "We've seen what happens when people with too much power go unchecked," a journalist for a major newspaper wrote. Musk's social media antics have already cost him millions. Now he wants to set the standards for everyone else. That's a recipe for disaster. But Musk wasn't backing down. He and his team worked tirelessly with the SEC, developing a framework that would define the boundaries of social media usage for public figures and corporate leaders. The guidelines they proposed included a set of rules for transparency, a commitment to truthfulness, and an emphasis on responsible communication. "This isn't about stifling creativity or innovation," Musk insisted. "This is about ensuring that we don't end up in a world where misinformation, manipulation, and greed are the only forces at play. If we want to build a better future, we need to set a better example." The first draft of the new guidelines was published, and while the media had plenty to say about it, there was no denying that Musk had successfully placed himself at the center of the conversation. The guidelines themselves were seen as a bold step forward, even if many critics argued that Musk's hands-on approach made them more about personal power than public good. His courtroom victory and subsequent leadership in shaping social media regulations had turned him into an even more polarizing figure. To his supporters, he was a visionary, a disruptor in the truest sense of the word. He wasn't content to just sit back and let others dictate the terms of engagement, he wanted to be the one who defined them. But for his detractors, Musk was a danger, a self-styled emperor of the digital age, seeking to wield influence over every corner of the business and social media landscape. To them, the thought of a world where Musk had the power to define corporate social media standards was a nightmare. As the debate raged on, something unexpected happened. The new guidelines began to take hold in the business world, with a number of major tech companies quietly adopting the framework. While many executives were reluctant to publicly endorse Musk's vision, they began to realize that they had little choice. The digital age had arrived, and the rules were changing whether they liked it or not. For Musk, this moment marked a new chapter. It wasn't just about the SEC fine anymore. It wasn't about the media frenzy or the court battles. He had positioned himself as the leader of a new era, an era where the lines between business, media, and personal influence were more intertwined than ever before. When you change the rules of the game, you don't just change your own playbook, you change everyone else's too. The first wave of shock had passed. Musk's victory in court, his leadership in crafting new social media regulations, and his bold attempts to redefine the relationship between businesses, media, and CEOs had captured the world's attention. But as his guidelines began to spread through the corporate world, it became clear that his actions would have far-reaching consequences. Some were excited by the change. Others? Not so much. In the weeks following the announcement of the new framework, corporate boardrooms became battlegrounds. CEOs, once proud of their autonomy, now faced an uncomfortable truth: the landscape had shifted, and they had no choice but to adapt to Musk's new reality. These companies, giants like General Electric, J.P. Morgan Chase, and Ford, had built their empires on decades of experience and business acumen. Their leaders were accustomed to dealing with regulatory bodies, negotiating deals behind closed doors, and keeping a tight lid on their public image. Social media, to them, was a tool, but it wasn't one they wielded often or effectively. They'd made their billions without the constant public exposure that Musk thrived on. Now, though, those days were coming to an end. Musk's insistence on accountability, that CEOs and public figures would now be held to higher standards for their digital interactions, struck fear into many of these older corporate leaders. Social media guidelines meant they could no longer operate with the same level of privacy they had grown accustomed to. A single misstep, a poorly worded tweet, could now affect their company's stock price, reputation, and future. "This is madness," one anonymous CEO grumbled to a reporter. "We've spent decades building trust with our clients and investors, and now we're supposed to be held accountable for what we post on Twitter. If I have to worry about how my every word is scrutinized, I'll quit the game altogether." The fear was real. For companies whose leaders had built their brands around conservative, controlled images, the idea of embracing public, unscripted discourse was a difficult pill to swallow. These executives, who had worked their entire careers to maintain their company's dignified, polished exterior, found themselves looking at Musk and his legion of digital followers with a mix of awe and anxiety. These were the companies that had always understood the power of digital engagement, companies like Facebook, Google, Amazon, and, of course, Tesla. In fact, Musk's own company, Tesla, had long been at the forefront of using social media not just for marketing but as a means of creating a personal connection with customers. Musk had blurred the lines between corporate executive and celebrity long before it was fashionable, using Twitter as his personal stage to make announcements, share his thoughts, and even troll critics. For these companies, Musk's new guidelines seemed like a natural evolution. They had already been dealing with the challenges of social media engagement in real time, and now the rules were being codified. "It's about time," one prominent tech CEO remarked. "We've been living in the Wild West for too long. A little bit of structure might actually help us avoid some of the chaos we've seen in the past." However, even within the tech world, not everyone was entirely on board. Some felt that Musk's influence could become too centralized, even within the industry he had helped build. There were concerns that the framework Musk was advocating could give too much power to a small group of CEOs, those like Musk himself, who controlled both the platforms and the rules for how they were used. "It's a double-edged sword," said one Silicon Valley insider. "Sure, we need standards, but are we really comfortable letting one person, no matter how influential, set those standards for everyone? There's a fine line between regulation and control, and I'm not sure where Musk's vision falls." These concerns were echoed across various industry forums and private meetings. Musk had made no secret of his ambitions to reshape the future, but the question now was whether he had inadvertently set the stage for a new era of corporate dominance where a few powerful figures, Musk included, could dictate the direction of entire industries. Meanwhile, the public perception of Musk continued to evolve. In the early days of his legal battle, many saw him as an eccentric billionaire with a penchant for controversy. But now, after his courtroom victory and his involvement in reshaping corporate regulations, he was emerging as something far more significant, a trailblazer. The media, too, was divided. While some outlets had criticized Musk for his unconventional approach to business and his social media antics, others began to view him as a visionary who was forcing the corporate world to evolve. "Musk is doing what many CEOs have been too afraid to do," wrote one analyst. He's recognizing the power of the people and using it to challenge an outdated system. He's not just a businessman, he's a cultural force. Musk's growing influence wasn't limited to just business. As he continued to navigate the complexities of this new digital era, he found himself at the intersection of technology, politics, and culture. His name became synonymous with disruption, and his actions, for better or worse, were becoming a template for how to lead in the 21st century. Musk's involvement in shaping social media guidelines had made headlines, but it also had tangible effects on the way his company operated. With more eyes on him than ever before, Musk felt a responsibility to make sure Tesla continued to innovate while also adapting to the new digital landscape he was helping to create. As part of the guidelines, Tesla implemented its own set of new rules for communication. Internal company communications became more transparent, and the company began rolling out its own initiatives to promote responsible social media use among its executives and employees. Employees, especially those in public-facing roles, were trained on how to engage with the public online in ways that were professional yet personal. Some employees struggled with the more open approach to communication, finding it difficult to balance transparency with the desire to maintain a sense of privacy. Others, however, thrived in this new environment, embracing the opportunity to engage directly with customers and fans online. Musk had done the unthinkable. He had turned a legal defeat into a triumph, transforming the business world's relationship with social media and altering the way companies engaged with the public. His courtroom battle, once seen as just another billionaire drama, had sparked a revolution, and the reverberations were now being felt far beyond the boardrooms and tech hubs. The new guidelines Musk had championed were just the beginning. While they were initially designed to ensure accountability and transparency in the digital space, the ripple effects of these changes began to have unintended consequences. The world, it seemed, was not ready for the type of digital shift Musk was orchestrating. Musk, never one to shy away from controversy, began using his newfound power to make bold statements about political and economic issues. His tweets, once mostly about his companies and space exploration, began to delve into matters of governance, society, and global policy. Musk, the CEO of Tesla, had transformed into something far more than a businessman. He was now a political influencer. The old political system is broken. It's time for new leadership, Musk tweeted one day, sending shockwaves through political circles. The future belongs to those who can think outside the system, not those who are stuck in it. His words were more than just provocative, they were a challenge to the status quo. Political leaders, especially in the United States, were now under pressure to acknowledge Musk's rising influence. On Capitol Hill, some lawmakers began to voice concerns about the potential dangers of a CEO wielding such enormous power over public opinion. We've seen how one person can change the course of an election with a tweet, one senator warned during a public hearing. What happens when that person owns a large chunk of the infrastructure of digital communication? Are we really okay with one man having this much control over the flow of information? But while some politicians feared Musk's growing influence, others were eager to embrace it. Some members of Congress saw Musk's vision as a chance to revolutionize the political system itself, streamlining the way leaders communicated with their constituencies, making politics more transparent and accessible. Musk, for his part, seemed unbothered by the political backlash. He doubled down on his message, making it clear that he wasn't interested in playing by the old rules. The system isn't working, he posted one night on Twitter. And the longer we wait to change it, the more it will fail. Meanwhile, as Musk's political influence grew, his social media dominance continued to shift the corporate landscape. The guidelines that had originally been about regulating the actions of CEOs on social platforms had now become a new form of cultural currency. For better or worse, a CEO's ability to successfully navigate social media had become an essential skill. And those who didn't adapt were being left behind. Smaller tech startups, eager to emulate Musk's success, began adopting his guidelines wholesale. They sought to mimic Musk's style, bold, brash, and unafraid to stir the pot. For them, social media wasn't just a way to engage with customers, it was a platform for shaping their brands, disrupting competitors, and dominating the digital landscape. "Musk has redefined what it means to be a CEO," said one startup founder. "The old days of just making a good product and hoping people would buy it are over. Now, if you're not in the conversation, you're irrelevant." But as more and more companies began to embrace Musk's model, problems started to surface. While the tech industry had long been used to rapid innovation and risk-taking, the new social media standards Musk championed were pushing some businesses to the brink. The pressure to constantly engage with followers, share personal insights, and express opinions on controversial topics created a culture of burnout. Employees at several companies reported feeling like they were living in a fishbowl. Every tweet, every post, every comment was scrutinized by the public. "It's like living in a pressure cooker," one employee at a prominent tech company confessed. "We're expected to tweet like Musk and act like Musk, but it's exhausting. There's no room for mistakes." The constant exposure took its toll on mental health. Employees, who once might have enjoyed a degree of privacy in their professional lives, found themselves pulled into the spotlight. Personal lives were no longer private, and every word became a potential PR disaster. Even more troubling were the companies that, in their attempts to adapt to the new rules, began to sacrifice authenticity for the sake of engagement. Rather than fostering genuine conversations with their customers, many CEOs and executives turned to scripted, performative posts designed to garner likes, shares, and retweets. It became a game of showmanship, where the lines between genuine leadership and social media performance blurred. The entertainment industry, long familiar with the power of public personas, found itself at a crossroads. Stars, influencers, and brands alike scrambled to adjust to the new standard that Musk had helped define. Social media wasn't just a place for celebrities to connect with their fans, it was now an essential part of their marketing strategy. Yet, as with the tech industry, the entertainment world also found itself grappling with the pressure to maintain a constant public presence. "Social media is no longer optional for us," said a popular actor during an interview. "We're expected to post, to engage, to build our personal brands. But where do we draw the line? When does it become too much?" The pressure to maintain a consistent digital image became so intense that many celebrities began hiring social media managers just to handle their online presence. A few even went so far as to hire PR firms to help them craft their posts, ensuring they maintained the perfect image. The result was a growing sense of disillusionment. Fans and followers began to see through the curated posts and staged appearances, realizing that what they were seeing was not the real person, but a manufactured persona. "The age of authentic connections is over," one critic wrote. "Now it's all about branding. It's all about selling an image." Musk's guidelines have changed the digital landscape, and the unintended consequences of these changes are becoming more apparent with each passing day. From politics to tech to entertainment, the pressure to adapt to the new rules is creating a new world, one that is more connected, more exposed, but also more prone to burnout and disillusionment. Musk's influence, once seen as a potential flash in the pan, has transformed him into a cultural icon, a symbol of the digital age. But as the world grapples with the consequences of his revolution, the question remains, has Musk created a new era of innovation and transparency, or has he simply ushered in a world where privacy and authenticity are sacrificed at the altar of social media engagement? By now, the world had come to understand that Musk's vision wasn't just about revolutionizing business practices or social media guidelines. His influence had transcended the corporate realm, seeping into the very fabric of society itself. From political leaders to everyday people, no one seemed untouched by the new digital landscape Musk had created. But with the rise of a world where transparency was the new currency, something else began to emerge, a growing sense of unease. Musk's model of engagement had forced both corporations and individuals into the spotlight, and the question on everyone's mind was, how much of ourselves were we willing to give away in the name of connection? What was the cost of living in a world where every thought, action, and opinion could be scrutinized in real time? Take Sarah Matthews, for instance. Sarah was a mid-level manager at a tech firm who had once prided herself on keeping her personal life private. Her social media accounts had been relatively low-key, mostly photos of her dog and some vacation pictures with her friends. But when the company she worked for adopted Musk's new social media guidelines, everything changed. Now, she was required to tweet regularly, engage with customers on platforms like Twitter and LinkedIn, and maintain an online presence that aligned with her company's mission. There was no getting away from it. Her personal identity had begun to blend with her professional one. "I don't know who I am anymore," Sarah confessed during a late-night conversation with a close friend. "I used to have boundaries between work and life. Now, it's like I have to be on all the time, whether I'm in the office or at home." Sarah wasn't alone. Many people, especially those in customer-facing roles, found themselves walking a fine line between authentic self-expression and the pressure to sell a polished, corporate-friendly persona. Privacy, once a right that people could easily claim, had now become a luxury. But the most unsettling part was not just the pressure to engage, it was the real-time nature of the interaction. People's opinions, attitudes, and emotions were now being broadcasted in real time, and as a result, public backlash had become more immediate and more severe than ever before. Research began to show that the constant exposure to public scrutiny was taking a toll on people's emotional well-being. Anxiety levels soared. Social media users reported feeling overwhelmed by the pressure to keep up with an ever-demanding digital world. In fact, a recent study found that a significant portion of the population was experiencing what some experts called digital burnout, a condition characterized by exhaustion, stress, and a loss of motivation due to overexposure in the digital space. "We've never had to deal with this level of constant visibility," said Dr. Ann Reynolds, a psychologist who had been studying the effects of social media on mental health. "The pressure to be constantly on, to be constantly performing, is wreaking havoc on people's mental health. It's like living in a glass house, everyone can see inside, but nobody is able to escape the scrutiny." For many, the feeling of being constantly watched had become unbearable. Privacy, once considered a basic right, was now seen as a privilege reserved only for those who could afford to opt out of the digital world entirely, something that felt impossible for most. The more people were forced to engage with each other online, the more their interactions began to feel transactional. The nuances of real-world communication, body language, tone, the comfort of face-to-face conversations, began to disappear. Musk's digital world had encouraged people to share more than they ever had before, but it also made them feel less seen. They weren't engaging with people, they were engaging with algorithms, trying to win the approval of followers, or satisfy the expectations of their companies and industries. In this new world, it was becoming harder to differentiate between the real self and the digital self. The lines between personal and professional were now officially blurred, and many struggled to find balance. Couples argued about time spent online. Parents worried about their children's mental health as they spent more time curating their social media profiles than they did interacting with their families. "We're losing something important," said a father of two during a support group meeting. "My kids are more interested in gaining followers than in having real conversations with people. They're learning that their worth is measured by how many likes they get, and it's terrifying." The rise of digital personas wasn't just damaging to adults, it was beginning to shape the younger generation's understanding of their own identities. Young people were growing up in a world where their self-worth was now determined, in part, by how many followers they had, how many comments they received, and how many people shared their posts. "What's real anymore?" asked a teenager named Emily, who had been active on social media for years. "You're never just yourself. You're always a version of yourself that fits the narrative of the platform. It's exhausting." People had been told, time and time again, that they could control their digital footprint, that they could choose which parts of their lives to share and which parts to keep hidden. But with the new guidelines Musk was pushing, that illusion of control was beginning to fade. Corporate companies, now operating under Musk's framework, had access to more personal data than ever before. And while the idea of transparency was meant to apply to CEOs and public figures, it wasn't long before the same principles were extended to ordinary employees. Social media managers and HR teams began using digital platforms to evaluate everything from job performance to personal behavior. In some cases, employees were even being asked to share their personal opinions on political issues or social movements, with the threat that their stance would affect their future career prospects. "It feels like we're living in a surveillance state," one employee at a large tech company admitted. "Every click, every like, it's all being watched. I'm terrified of saying the wrong thing. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning." What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The rapid changes initiated by Musk's guidelines had already shaken the digital landscape to its core. But as the boundaries between personal and professional lives blurred even further, the question of identity loomed larger than ever. What happens when the way you are perceived online becomes more important than who you are offline? In a world that no longer recognizes the distinction between public and private life, how does one retain their sense of self? This wasn't just a crisis for the masses, it was a crisis for everyone. The more society embraced Musk's model, the more technology began to dictate the very essence of human identity. Lucas was the kind of person who valued his personal privacy. He'd always kept his online presence to a minimum, barely any social media activity, no personal posts, and certainly no oversharing. His LinkedIn profile was sparse, and his Facebook was locked down tighter than a vault. "Why do I need to put myself out there? My work speaks for itself," Lucas would say to anyone who asked why he wasn't more active online. But when his company embraced Musk's social media overhaul, things began to change. The company made it clear, all employees were now required to publicly endorse the corporate message and maintain an active social media presence. They were encouraged to post regularly about the company's progress, share their personal achievements, and, most importantly, engage with followers. Lucas, initially resistant, reluctantly agreed to comply. He had no choice, his job depended on it. And soon enough, the once private developer found himself in the public eye, not just as a programmer, but as a brand. The change wasn't instant. But slowly, Lucas began to notice how his online identity began to bleed into his offline persona. As his social media presence grew, so did his profile within his company. Colleagues who had once seen him as a quiet coder now approached him with admiration, asking for his advice on everything from coding practices to his personal opinions on the company's new product launches. Lucas, once an introvert, had been thrust into a world where his opinions mattered, and where they were visible to a massive online audience. The flood of likes and retweets felt good at first. But soon, something shifted. The pressure to maintain a certain image online began to take a toll. He couldn't just tweet about his latest project anymore. Now, he was expected to engage in discussions about politics, tech innovation, and even controversial topics that made him uncomfortable. "I don't want to be the face of this," Lucas muttered one evening, staring at his screen. The more he posted, the more he realized how much of himself he was giving away. With every tweet, every picture, and every blog post, his personal life, thoughts, and opinions were becoming public property. It wasn't long before Lucas experienced what many others were now facing, the disconnect between the person he had always been and the person his online presence had turned him into. The boundaries between Lucas the software developer and Lucas the brand began to blur. He didn't know who he was anymore. Was he the quiet, reserved individual who only cared about his work? Or was he the charismatic thought leader he had been forced to become for the sake of visibility? This was the new reality, and it wasn't just limited to tech workers like Lucas. It was happening to everyone, from teachers to doctors to stay-at-home parents. In this new world, identity wasn't defined by who you were in person anymore, it was defined by who you were online. Musk's vision of a transparent, connected society had created an environment where one's digital identity held more weight than their physical identity. The lines had become so blurred that the concept of privacy was now seen as outdated. To succeed in Musk's world, individuals had to embrace the public exposure, live by the mantra of constant engagement, and find ways to craft a digital persona that aligned with the cultural zeitgeist. Authenticity, it seemed, was becoming obsolete in favor of curation. It was a shared, collective experience, shaped not just by personal choices, but by algorithms and expectations. Your personality, your likes, your opinions, all were shaped by the feedback loop of likes, shares, and retweets. This change affected not only professionals but ordinary people, too. Social media became a filter for how the world saw you, but also how you saw the world. Many began to tailor their opinions and actions to fit the narratives they felt would be most engaging online. The distinction between living a real life and an online life became harder to discern. For someone like Emily Davis, a high school teacher and mother of two, the shift was overwhelming. She had grown up in an era where privacy and face-to-face interactions were valued. But now, Emily found herself pressured by her school to maintain a visible presence online, not just for professional networking, but to engage with her students and their parents in a more personal way. Emily was now expected to post pictures of her lessons, share her thoughts on social issues, and even engage with her students on social media. What had once been a calm, well-structured life had transformed into an ongoing performance. "I'm no longer just a teacher," Emily confided to a friend one evening. "I'm a character, a brand. And I feel like I'm losing who I really am." Are we still in control of our own identities? Or have we become mere cogs in a digital machine, whose sense of self is shaped by the digital ecosystem Musk has helped create? With the rise of influencer culture, fake personas, and curated lives, it's becoming clear that the definition of self is no longer just personal. We live in a world where the stakes are high. If you don't engage, if you don't share, if you don't perform, you risk falling into irrelevance. And with the power of social media algorithms and digital manipulation, it's hard to know if we're even engaging with reality anymore. The question at the heart of it all is no longer about how we connect, it's about what happens when our online identities begin to replace our real ones. In Musk's world, the lines are blurred. The consequences are real. The only certainty in this new era is that the future of identity is forever intertwined with technology, and the cost of that connection may be higher than anyone could have ever imagined. As Musk's vision continued to infiltrate the world of business, it was becoming increasingly clear that the corporate landscape was no longer just about profits, products, and services. The rules of success were shifting, and the game was changing faster than most could adapt. Gone were the days when a company's success was determined solely by the quality of its products or its bottom-line numbers. Now, it was about how businesses presented themselves on social media, how they interacted with the public, and most importantly, how they curated their digital presence. And at the center of it all, of course, was the man responsible for this new reality, Elon Musk. Branding is no longer just a marketing tool, it's your identity, Musk had famously said in one of his earlier speeches. And for better or for worse, this mindset was transforming not just the way companies operated, but also the very fabric of society itself. Businesses that failed to align with Musk's digital-first vision were quickly left behind, unable to compete in an increasingly transparent and hyper-connected world. Innovatech, a mid-sized tech firm based in San Francisco, had been struggling with the digital shift. For years, Innovatech had prided itself on its high-quality products, but it had never fully embraced the power of social media and public engagement. They were content with a modest online presence, relying on traditional advertising and word-of-mouth marketing. But with Musk's new emphasis on online visibility, the game had changed completely. If Innovatech didn't step up their digital game, they risked becoming irrelevant. "We can't afford to keep our heads in the sand anymore," said Janet Lyle, the company's chief marketing officer. "If we don't build our digital presence, we're going to fall behind." Janet's team scrambled to create social media campaigns, curate content, and build relationships with influencers who could help elevate Innovatech's image. But what Janet didn't realize was that simply having a presence online wasn't enough anymore. With Musk's model, it was about more than just selling a product, it was about creating a persona. A company's digital identity was no longer limited to logos and taglines, it had to be about how they interacted with their audience, how they aligned with popular opinions, and how much they were willing to expose to the public. Innovatech was behind the curve. But catching up would prove to be a bigger challenge than anyone could have anticipated. Madison had built her career around creating viral content and shaping the online personas of celebrities and brands. When she was brought on board by Innovatech, the company was in disarray. They had no real digital strategy and even less understanding of how to use their online presence to drive real-world success. "You can't just be a tech company anymore," Madison told the executives at Innovatech during her first meeting. "You need to be a culture. You need to be a force that people want to engage with. That's what Musk understands. And that's why people follow him. He's not just selling products, he's selling a lifestyle." It sounded like a bold claim, but Madison knew that if Innovatech wanted to survive, they needed to follow this new formula. So, she began restructuring the company's digital strategy. The first step was rebranding Innovatech as online persona. They moved away from traditional marketing tactics and focused on building emotional connections with their customers. The company started engaging with followers on a more personal level, responding to comments, holding live-streamed Q&A sessions, and pushing out content that reflected the company's values. But there was a catch: the content had to be authentic. "People can smell inauthenticity a mile away," Madison told Janet. "If you're not real, you're not going to last in this new world." It worked. Innovatech's online following began to grow. But as they gained more followers, the pressure mounted. Innovatech wasn't just trying to sell tech products anymore, they were trying to shape a narrative, one that would appeal to both current customers and potential ones. And there was one key element to this strategy that Musk had perfected: the integration of controversy. Musk had a knack for stirring the pot, making bold statements that got people talking. Whether it was a tweet about an ambitious Mars colonization plan or a controversial comment about a competitor's product, Musk had made a name for himself by not shying away from the spotlight. In fact, controversy became his brand. Innovatech, too, began to test the waters with more daring content. They released ads that were intentionally provocative, poking fun at their competitors and engaging in debates that would spark public conversations. But even as their engagement numbers skyrocketed, they were faced with a new problem: what if the controversy went too far? On one hand, the rewards of creating an engaging and dynamic digital persona were immense. The exposure could lead to increased sales, greater recognition, and ultimately, market dominance. But on the other hand, missteps were more dangerous than ever before. One wrong move, one poorly worded tweet, or one misjudged viral campaign could lead to a massive backlash. And with everyone plugged into social media, the consequences could be swift and unforgiving. This was the high-risk, high-reward world of Musk's digital empire. And as Innovatech learned the hard way, the real cost of success in this new age was not just about adapting to the digital landscape, it was about learning how to play the game with precision. Musk's transformation of the corporate world wasn't limited to changing how businesses marketed themselves, it was changing how power was distributed. In the past, large corporations controlled the narrative. They dictated what the public knew, what they saw, and how they interacted with brands. But in Musk's world, that narrative was no longer just in the hands of the few. The public, the consumers, had become just as powerful. They weren't just buying products, they were voting with their clicks, likes, and shares. They had the power to elevate a company, or destroy it with a single hashtag. In this new era, a company's success or failure was increasingly dictated by the digital pulse of its audience. And in this digital age, the fight for power had gone beyond corporate boardrooms. It was now about public perception, about how well businesses could manipulate, engage, and perform for the masses. Musk had created a world where public opinion wasn't just a factor, it was the foundation. And those who learned to master the art of influence would reign supreme. As Musk's influence over the digital and corporate worlds continued to expand, the lines between true innovation and simple imitation began to blur. The rapid pace at which companies were expected to keep up with trends, while also responding to an ever-evolving digital landscape, was creating a paradox: everyone was innovating, yet no one seemed to be creating anything truly new. The mantra of Musk's empire was clear: adapt or die. But as more businesses and individuals rushed to hop on the latest trends, a new question emerged: at what point does adaptation turn into repetition? Take a look at Lena Williams, a young entrepreneur and startup founder who had initially been full of enthusiasm when she entered the tech industry. Lena's startup, Future Vision, was a company founded on the idea of disrupting traditional tech with groundbreaking solutions in AI and augmented reality. She'd watched Musk's meteoric rise and had even been inspired by his willingness to push boundaries. It was this very idea of changing the world that drove Lena's passion to innovate. Her business model was centered on developing smart tech designed to enhance the human experience, something Musk himself had always championed. Lena and her team were dedicated to creating cutting-edge products that could redefine how people interacted with technology. But despite the revolutionary potential of her product line, she kept running into a significant issue. Every time she thought she'd developed something new, she found that someone else had already thought of it. Her flagship product, a set of smart glasses that could overlay augmented reality into a user's field of vision, was a direct competitor to products already being teased by the big tech giants. It felt like no matter how hard she worked, she was always a step behind. Every new technological advancement felt like it was being recycled from ideas that were already out there. Musk's dominance in the tech world had forced every company to race towards innovation, faster, bigger, and better. But with such rapid progress, Lena began to wonder, was she truly innovating, or was she just copying the things others had already perfected? The digital world, powered by Musk's principles, had created a unique paradox. The faster businesses raced to create, the more their creations seemed to be echoing one another. In a world where the demand for the next big thing was always at its peak, true originality felt elusive. The lines between innovation and imitation had never been more unclear. Musk's open-source philosophy, which had encouraged many to build upon the successes of others, had, in many ways, started to feel like a double-edged sword. What Musk saw as sharing ideas for progress could easily be interpreted as flooding the market with replicas. The market was full of ideas that were not entirely new, but rather tweaks on what already existed. Companies seemed less focused on creating something from scratch, and more interested in the next big trend, whether it was a product, a service, or a platform. And the pace of this repetition was only getting faster. For Lena, the tipping point came when she stumbled upon a report about a new startup, an offshoot of a company she had been following for months, that was essentially launching a product almost identical to hers, but with only slight alterations. They were touting the same augmented reality glasses with similar features, and their marketing looked strangely familiar. Lena felt a sinking feeling in her stomach. This wasn't the first time it had happened. And with Musk's influence over the tech community, Lena was beginning to feel like she was constantly chasing someone else's dream, trying to catch up with the ideas that were already floating around in the ether. She called a meeting with her team to discuss what they should do next. "We can't just be another copycat," Lena declared, her voice shaking. "We need to stop trying to follow trends and start creating our own. If we're going to survive, we need to do something different, something Musk would do." Her team had been working overtime to perfect the smart glasses. They had even sourced rare materials and partnered with leading AR companies to get ahead of the competition. But as the competition caught up, they began to realize that no matter how innovative their technology was, it would always be compared to Musk's empire. They were caught in a constant game of keeping up, but Lena refused to play the same game anymore. The question was, what would it look like if they stopped imitating and started innovating in a way that no one else could copy? The battle between innovation and imitation wasn't just one that affected startups like Lena's, it was a challenge facing businesses across all industries. Whether in tech, healthcare, fashion, or entertainment, companies were increasingly faced with the question, what does it mean to be truly original in a world where everything feels like a remix? Musk himself had become a paradox, a disruptor who built his empire by building on the ideas of others. His ability to take existing technologies and push them to the limit had inspired many, but now, it was becoming clear that the line between revolutionary ideas and simple rebranding was razor-thin. As Lena's team worked tirelessly to rethink their strategy, they realized something pivotal. In a world where imitation seemed like the easiest path, the only way to truly stand out was to innovate in ways that were so bold, so unconventional, that no one could imitate them. They decided to pivot their focus. Instead of competing directly with the big players, Lena and her team would go in a completely different direction. They would focus on creating something so unique, so unpredictable, that it would not only disrupt the industry but also change how people viewed technology. They would create an experience, not just a product. The rise of Elon Musk's digital empire didn't just change how businesses operated, it transformed the very nature of work itself. In this new world, the traditional office setting was being replaced by remote teams, digital collaboration, and influencers who could wield power just as effectively as corporate CEOs. The workplace of the future was evolving rapidly, and the people who adapted were being rewarded in unprecedented ways. But with this new power dynamic came new challenges. The idea of who holds the power in a company was being questioned like never before. Was it the CEOs at the top, or was it the employees in the trenches, utilizing their online presence to shift public opinion and create new market demand? Eric had always been proud of his role as a decision-maker in a company that had seen steady growth. He had a team of developers and project managers who relied on his leadership to navigate their daily tasks. But the world was changing quickly around him, and the old dynamics of work were no longer enough to ensure success. It started subtly. Employees began to ask for more flexibility in their work schedules. They wanted to work remotely, engage in digital communities, and contribute to projects that were not only company-centric but also aligned with their personal passions. They no longer saw work as a rigid 9-to-5 job but as a lifestyle that integrated seamlessly with their digital identity. At first, Eric resisted. He saw these requests as disruptions, threats to the structured order of the company. But slowly, the pressure from his team mounted. They were no longer just interested in working for a paycheck, they wanted to build something more personal. And in many ways, they already had the tools to do so. They didn't need the office to collaborate. They didn't need traditional authority to lead. With social media, personal brands, and viral platforms, the balance of power was shifting toward the employees, the influencers, and the digital entrepreneurs. Sarah had been with the company for 3 years. She had always been an incredibly skilled software developer, but her influence had expanded far beyond her coding expertise. She had cultivated a substantial social media following and had become a thought leader in her field. Her online presence was immense, and her opinions were sought after by tech industry insiders. Eric had always respected Sarah's abilities, but he couldn't shake the feeling that her online persona was starting to eclipse her professional role. It wasn't long before Sarah became a major source of tension in the workplace. Sarah began to use her platform to speak out on company issues, share her thoughts on industry trends, and offer advice to budding software developers. She received offers for partnerships, sponsorships, and speaking engagements, many of which had nothing to do with her role at the company. "Sarah," Eric began, his tone serious, "I've noticed your growing social media presence. It's impressive, but I'm concerned that it's taking away from your focus on work here. This company needs its employees to dedicate themselves fully to the job, not to side projects or personal branding." Sarah, however, was unfazed. She had heard this line of thinking before. "Eric, with all due respect," she replied, "my digital presence is a huge asset to the company. It's not just a side project, it's part of my professional identity. People follow me because I provide value, and that value can be used to enhance our brand. Why should I shut down my platform when it can bring more attention to our work?" Eric was taken aback. Sarah's argument was valid, but it challenged his long-held beliefs about work, hierarchy, and authority. She was right. The new digital age didn't require employees to compartmentalize their lives into work and personal spheres anymore. The lines were blurred. Sarah's following gave her a voice that could impact not only her career but the company's future. This conversation marked a pivotal turning point in Eric's understanding of work. As the digital revolution continued to unfold, it became increasingly clear that the future of employment wasn't tied to traditional office roles or the authority of a single person at the top. Employees like Sarah were becoming the new power players in the workplace, able to influence public opinion, market trends, and even the direction of a company. Their reach extended far beyond the corporate walls, their influence was amplified by social media, and they could now engage with audiences on a global scale, while companies were being forced to adapt to these shifts. For many companies, including Eric's, this was a jarring realization. The old hierarchical model, where managers and executives held the keys to the kingdom, was slowly giving way to a new kind of workforce: freelancers, influencers, digital leaders, and remote workers who didn't fit into the conventional mold. In this new world, the employees didn't just work for the company, they represented the company. They were the face of the brand, and their individual personas carried as much weight as the official company brand itself. This shift in power dynamics also meant that employers had to reconsider their approaches to leadership and management. Traditional authority was being replaced with a more collaborative and flexible model, one that emphasized trust, autonomy, and transparency. Employees, particularly those with strong digital presences, no longer needed to conform to outdated structures. They were building their own digital empires, and companies had to learn to embrace this new model or risk being left behind. As Sarah and other employees continued to thrive in this new environment, Eric began to shift his mindset. He realized that to keep up with the changing tides, he needed to empower his team members to bring their full selves to the table. This meant encouraging employees to build their own personal brands, use their influence to drive change, and engage with the wider world beyond the company's walls. The idea of a rigid, top-down power structure was being replaced by a more fluid and decentralized model, where leadership wasn't just about hierarchy, it was about the value individuals could contribute to the collective goals of the team. The challenges that Eric faced weren't unique. Businesses across the globe were grappling with similar issues. Some were thriving by embracing the changes, while others struggled to adapt. The companies that thrived were the ones that understood that true innovation wasn't just about the products they created, it was about creating a workplace culture where everyone's digital presence could contribute to the company's success. In an age where every action, opinion, and tweet is scrutinized, the mental toll of being constantly connected is becoming one of the most pressing issues of the digital age. Elon Musk's empire, with its hyperconnectivity and relentless drive for progress, has not only reshaped how businesses operate but has also had a profound impact on the mental well-being of its workforce, customers, and even its creator. Julia was one of the many who had embraced the digital world early on. She had been a content creator since the early days of YouTube and had parlayed her online presence into a lucrative business. With hundreds of thousands of followers on various social media platforms, Julia's opinion carried weight, and her endorsements were highly sought after. But as the years went on, Julia began to feel the pressure of always needing to be on. She had become a brand unto herself, and with that came the constant expectation to create, perform, and keep up with the fast-paced demands of the digital world. Her day-to-day life was filled with hours of content creation, social media engagement, and managing her business ventures. She'd wake up early to check her emails, post updates, engage with her followers, and plan her next piece of content. It wasn't just a job, it was a lifestyle. Every moment, every interaction, was scrutinized. She had to perform in front of an audience that expected her to always be at her best. But the cracks in the facade were beginning to show. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up," Julia confessed, her voice trembling. "It feels like no matter what I do, it's never enough. I have to keep posting, keep engaging, keep evolving, but it's exhausting. It's like I'm living in this constant cycle of perform, 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 and never really living." Alex, who had been with Julia since the beginning, knew exactly what she meant. They'd watched her grow from a small influencer into a powerful figure in the tech world, but at what cost? "You've built something incredible, Julia," but at what point do you stop? Alex asked gently. At what point do you give yourself permission to rest, to breathe? The constant need to create, it's not sustainable. Julia stared at the floor, feeling the weight of Alex's words. She knew deep down that the lifestyle she had built, the one she had worked so hard to cultivate, was slowly destroying her mental health. In a world where information flows non-stop and everyone is expected to be constantly available, the concept of downtime had become a luxury. The psychological impact of being always online was significant. Anxiety, burnout, depression, and a sense of alienation were common experiences. Musk's empire, with its rapid innovation and focus on pushing boundaries, was a driving force behind this cultural shift. His companies, like Tesla and SpaceX, operated at the cutting edge of technology, demanding not just constant innovation but also the personal investment of its employees and followers. Musk himself, as a public figure, embodied the culture of endless productivity and digital omnipresence. He was always working, always innovating, always moving toward the next frontier. But for Julia, and many others, this model of constant hustle and never stop was unsustainable. Across the tech world, the issue of digital resilience, the ability to cope with the mental demands of constant digital engagement, was beginning to take center stage. Tech companies, feeling the strain of employee burnout and the toll it took on creativity, were starting to experiment with new ways to address mental health in the workplace. While some companies offered wellness programs, meditation apps, and flexible work hours, others recognized that the key to resilience wasn't just about offering perks, it was about fostering a culture that valued rest, recovery, and mental well-being as much as it valued productivity and innovation. One company, in particular, known for its disruptive approach to business, decided to make a bold move. The company was called MindShift, and it had been founded by a group of former tech executives who were tired of the toxic work culture that permeated Silicon Valley. MindShift's goal was simple: create a space where employees could thrive without sacrificing their mental health. They embraced a philosophy that was in direct contrast to Musk's hyper-competitive, non-stop work culture. Their mantra was, innovation through balance. Instead of endless hours at the office or the pressure to work around the clock, MindShift encouraged employees to set boundaries, take time off when needed, and engage in practices that nurtured their emotional and psychological well-being. They provided mental health days, weekly meditation sessions, and flexible working hours that allowed employees to take care of themselves. MindShift became an instant hit in Silicon Valley, attracting top talent who had grown disillusioned with the hustle culture that had dominated the tech industry for so long. The rise of MindShift and similar companies represented a new kind of resilience in the digital age, a resilience that wasn't about grinding through adversity but about learning to thrive by embracing balance and mental health. Julia, watching the rise of MindShift from her own struggles, began to rethink her approach to her career. She realized that while the digital age had provided her with opportunities to build her brand and grow her business, it had also placed immense pressure on her to constantly be on. She began to question whether the hustle was truly worth it. Was the constant chase for content and engagement leading her to happiness, or was it just leading to burnout? At first, it was incredibly difficult. She felt like she was abandoning her followers, like she was letting down the very people who had supported her for years. But as the days went by, she began to realize that this time away was exactly what she needed. She reconnected with her true self, without the constant barrage of notifications and demands from her digital persona. By the end of the week, Julia felt recharged and refocused. She understood now that digital resilience didn't mean constantly keeping up with the flow, it meant knowing when to step away and take care of her mental health. The integration of artificial intelligence, AI, into the workforce has become one of the most defining shifts of the digital age. Once thought of as a futuristic concept, AI is now an everyday tool that has transformed the way businesses operate, how individuals interact with technology, and how work itself is structured. In the context of Elon Musk's empire, AI is at the very heart of the innovation that drives companies like Tesla and SpaceX. Musk, a vocal advocate for AI development, has made it clear that AI is not just a tool for the future, it's the foundation of the future. But what does this mean for the workforce? What happens when machines are no longer just assistants, but full-fledged partners in the workplace? Enter Emma Nguyen, a software engineer who had recently transitioned from a traditional development role to one involving human-AI collaboration at a tech firm that was one of Musk's biggest supporters. Emma had spent years honing her craft as a developer. She was used to sitting in front of a computer, writing lines of code, debugging, and problem-solving, often for long hours. But in the past few months, her role had started to change. Instead of working on code by herself, she was now working alongside an AI assistant that helped her with tasks like debugging, suggesting optimizations, and even generating entire sections of code based on her initial ideas. It was like having a coworker who never got tired, never needed a break, and had access to vast amounts of information and data at the speed of thought. At first, Emma found the transition overwhelming. She was used to having control over every line of code, and the idea of sharing that control with a machine felt unsettling. But the more she worked with the AI, the more she realized that it wasn't just a tool, it was a collaborator. Her AI assistant didn't replace her work, it enhanced it. She was able to accomplish tasks much faster than before, and the AI's ability to predict potential issues and suggest solutions helped Emma avoid costly mistakes. For the first time, she felt like she was working smarter, not harder. But the deeper Emma got into human-AI collaboration, the more questions she began to ask. What happens to my role as a developer if AI can do so much of the work? Will my job eventually become obsolete? These were questions that every worker involved in human-AI collaboration was asking. If machines were capable of doing the work of humans, how would the role of the human employee evolve? And perhaps more importantly, how would we maintain a sense of purpose and fulfillment in a world where AI was doing so much of the work? The answer, many experts believe, is not that AI will replace humans but that AI will work alongside humans, creating new roles and opportunities for collaboration. In fact, the rise of AI is leading to a fundamental shift in what it means to be a worker. Instead of relying solely on technical skills or manual labor, the future of work is focused on problem-solving, creative thinking, and emotional intelligence, traits that are uniquely human. Emma's role was a perfect example of this new reality. While AI helped her with the technical aspects of her job, it was her creativity and intuition that drove the project forward. She still had to make critical decisions, understand the broader context, and ensure that the product she was working on aligned with the company's mission and values. One of the most pressing fears surrounding AI was that it would lead to widespread job displacement. As more tasks were automated and AI-driven systems took on roles traditionally held by humans, workers began to fear for their livelihoods. Would there still be room for them in a world where AI could perform many tasks more efficiently? Elon Musk had long been an advocate for universal basic income, UBI, as a potential solution to this issue. He argued that as AI and automation made certain jobs obsolete, society would need to adapt by ensuring that people had access to basic financial support, regardless of employment status. While UBI was still a hotly debated topic, the concern about job displacement was real. However, many experts believe that AI will create more jobs than it destroys, albeit different kinds of jobs. The rise of AI will demand a workforce that is highly skilled in managing, developing, and working alongside intelligent systems. This shift in the labor market will likely lead to new industries, particularly in fields like AI ethics, machine learning development, and digital well-being. Her company, recognizing the importance of this shift, was providing employees like Emma with opportunities to upskill and reimagine their roles in the face of AI advancement. Emma enrolled in a series of courses focused on AI ethics, human-machine collaboration, and advanced data analysis, which helped her understand the broader implications of AI in the workplace and how she could leverage it to her advantage. AI wasn't just replacing jobs, it was transforming the nature of what it meant to be a worker. Humans were no longer confined to a world of routine tasks and predictable outputs. Instead, they were being asked to engage in higher-level thinking, creativity, and emotional intelligence, areas where AI, for all its capabilities, still struggled. At the same time, AI was becoming more than just a tool, it was a partner, a colleague, and a collaborator. The future of work would be about embracing this collaboration and finding ways to co-create with machines, rather than competing against them. As the lines between human and machine blurred, so too did the lines between work and identity. For many workers, the rise of AI meant more than just a shift in the workplace, it was a profound transformation of what it meant to be human in an increasingly digital world. The challenges were emotional, psychological, and deeply personal. Emma Nguyen, who had embraced the idea of human-AI collaboration as a tool to enhance her skills, was beginning to grapple with something more complex than technical integration. She was facing a question that many others in her position were starting to ask themselves: am I still me if AI is doing so much of my job? Her productivity had skyrocketed. Complex coding challenges that once took hours now took mere minutes. The AI suggested optimizations and even predicted errors before they occurred. But deep down, Emma couldn't shake a feeling that was becoming harder to ignore: she wasn't sure if she was still in control. As the AI grew more adept at handling the technical details, Emma found herself questioning her sense of purpose in the workplace. It wasn't that she didn't enjoy the collaboration, it was that she was starting to feel like a passenger in her own career. Her role had shifted. No longer was she the one solving every problem. Now, she was merely overseeing and fine-tuning a machine that seemed to have all the answers. The emotional toll of this shift was more profound than Emma had expected. Psychologists and experts in the field of AI integration were warning of a new emotional crisis emerging as people came to terms with their new relationships with machines. People like Emma were starting to face an identity crisis, a challenge that involved redefining their place in the world when their roles were no longer just shaped by their own skills but also by the capabilities of intelligent systems. In Emma's case, she had spent years building her skills, understanding code, solving problems, and earning her place in the tech world. But now, she was confronted with a machine that could do much of the same work, faster, more efficiently, and without emotional fatigue. This was causing feelings of inadequacy, self-doubt, and a sense of loss for many in her position. Across the world, people were facing a similar crisis as they navigated their relationships with AI in the workplace. In the manufacturing sector, assembly line workers were finding themselves replaced by robots that could perform tasks with precision and speed that humans couldn't match. In healthcare, doctors and nurses were learning to work alongside AI-powered diagnostic tools that could predict illnesses before symptoms even appeared. In the creative industries, AI tools were being used to generate art, write scripts, and compose music. At first glance, these innovations seemed like advancements, ways to make life easier, more efficient, and more productive. But on a deeper level, many workers were grappling with the question: if machines can do so much, what does that mean for me? In a survey conducted by a tech consulting firm, over 60% of workers said they felt a growing sense of anxiety and uncertainty as they realized that AI was becoming an integral part of their professional lives. These feelings weren't just about job security, they were about identity, about who you are when your work is no longer uniquely your own. Many workers reported experiencing a loss of purpose, especially in roles that had been traditionally viewed as requiring a human touch. Therapists, for instance, worried that their work could one day be replaced by AI-powered mental health apps. Artists and musicians felt threatened by algorithms that could produce works of art and music at a fraction of the time it took to create them by hand. In essence, the more humans collaborated with machines, the more they questioned their place in the system. While it was easy to see the challenges that came with working alongside AI, many experts believed that this new dynamic didn't have to come at the cost of humanity. In fact, the future of work, they argued, would be built on a blend of human intuition and AI efficiency, where humans could focus on what machines couldn't do. The solution, experts suggested, wasn't to fear AI or resist its advancement, but to embrace it as a partner that could help elevate human potential. AI was powerful, but it lacked the emotional intelligence, creativity, and ethical reasoning that humans brought to the table. She realized that AI wasn't there to replace her, it was there to amplify her skills, freeing her from repetitive tasks so that she could focus on the higher-level aspects of her work that truly required a human touch, creative problem-solving, collaboration, and emotional intelligence. Emma decided to reframe her relationship with AI. Rather than seeing it as a competitor, she saw it as a tool for personal growth and professional development. She embraced the idea that her value wasn't in her ability to churn out code quickly, it was in her ability to innovate, to think outside the box, and to bring a human perspective to the table. The future of work wasn't about fighting against AI, it was about figuring out how to work alongside it. The emotional and psychological toll of these changes was real, but so too was the potential for growth. As humans, we had to find new ways to define our purpose, our role, and our humanity in a world increasingly shaped by technology. The challenge of the future would be to maintain our emotional resilience and sense of identity while working alongside machines. And for Emma, that journey was just beginning. As artificial intelligence, AI, continues to shape the workforce, the world is beginning to confront a crucial question: how do we balance the power of AI with the responsibility to use it ethically? In a landscape where machines can predict human behavior, influence decision-making, and even replace human workers, the need for clear ethical frameworks has never been more pressing. Elon Musk, as both a vocal advocate for AI and a pioneering entrepreneur, has often warned about the dangers of unchecked AI development. He has described AI as potentially being more dangerous than nuclear weapons, and has called for regulation and careful oversight to ensure that AI is developed responsibly. Musk's concerns highlight a central issue that is becoming more apparent as AI becomes increasingly integrated into our lives. Can we trust that AI will be used for the benefit of society, or will it be exploited by powerful interests for profit and control? Emma Nguyen, who had come to see her AI assistant as a collaborator, was now also starting to think about the broader implications of her work. While she saw firsthand how AI could transform the way people work, she was increasingly aware of the ethical dilemmas posed by this technology. As a developer, she felt a responsibility not only to create functional and efficient systems but also to consider their impact on society. AI was, after all, just a tool. It was the humans behind the technology, developers, designers, business leaders, and policymakers, who would ultimately decide how it was used. The choices that these individuals made would determine whether AI became a force for good or for harm. As AI took on a more prominent role, it started to influence how employees were hired, how tasks were assigned, and even how performance was evaluated. Algorithms could be used to screen resumes, assess job candidates, and predict employee success, but these algorithms weren't always perfect. In fact, many AI systems had been found to inherit the biases of the data they were trained on, leading to discrimination and unfair treatment of certain groups. Emma had witnessed this firsthand. At her company, AI-driven tools were used to assess employee performance. The system tracked metrics like code efficiency, project completion rates, and collaboration scores. While these tools were designed to help managers identify top performers, they sometimes overlooked important factors, like creativity or the ability to work under pressure, that couldn't be measured by algorithms alone. One of Emma's colleagues, Javier, a talented developer, had received a lower performance score from the AI system due to his nonlinear work patterns. Javier often worked in bursts of intense focus, followed by periods of rest, which the AI interpreted as laziness or inefficiency. Emma knew that Javier's unconventional work style was actually his strength. He needed time to recharge in order to unleash his best ideas. But the AI didn't see it that way. This example raised troubling questions for Emma. Could AI systems become tools for perpetuating biases, even when they were designed with the best intentions? And if AI was playing a larger role in hiring and promotion decisions, how could companies ensure that their AI systems were fair, transparent, and accountable? They argued that AI needed to be developed and deployed with human well-being at the forefront, and that clear ethical principles should guide every stage of its life cycle. The ethical concerns surrounding AI were multifaceted, and it wasn't just about ensuring fairness in hiring or preventing bias. The bigger question was, how do we ensure that AI serves humanity and doesn't undermine fundamental human values? At the heart of the discussion were issues like bias and fairness. How can we ensure that AI systems are designed to be fair and unbiased, and that they don't perpetuate existing inequalities? Transparency. How do we make sure that the decision-making processes of AI systems are transparent and understandable to the people affected by them? Privacy. With AI having access to vast amounts of personal data, how can we protect individuals' privacy and ensure that their data is used responsibly? Accountability. When an AI system makes a mistake or causes harm, who is responsible? Should developers, companies, or AI systems themselves be held accountable? There were debates about whether governments should regulate AI development, and if so, to what extent. Some experts argued that overregulation could stifle innovation, while others warned that lack of regulation could lead to a dystopian future where AI systems were used to manipulate or exploit people. The challenge, it seemed, was to find a balance, one that would allow for innovation while ensuring that AI was developed responsibly and ethically. Elon Musk, who had long advocated for government oversight of AI, was pushing for preemptive regulation. His argument was that by the time AI had evolved to the point where it could cause harm, it would be too late to regulate effectively. Musk believed that proactive regulation was necessary to ensure that AI would be used in ways that benefited humanity, rather than leading to unintended consequences. Emma was part of a team that was tasked with integrating ethical guidelines into their AI systems. Her role was to help ensure that the AI tools her company developed were transparent, fair, and accountable, and that they aligned with the company's core values. One of the first steps her team took was to create a set of ethics guidelines for AI development, which included 1. Bias mitigation, ensuring that AI systems were designed to detect and eliminate biases in the data and algorithms. 2. Transparency, making AI decision-making processes clear to users and stakeholders. 3. Privacy protection, safeguarding user data and ensuring that AI systems were used responsibly in accordance with privacy laws. 4. Human oversight, ensuring that humans remained in control of critical decision-making processes and could intervene when necessary. She realized that AI ethics wasn't just about avoiding harm, it was about shaping a future where AI could be a force for good, supporting human flourishing rather than diminishing it. The opportunity to shape the ethical use of AI gave her a sense of ownership and responsibility that reignited her passion for her work. As the world faces an array of urgent crises, from climate change to inequality, AI is being viewed not only as a tool for efficiency but as a potential game-changer for solving some of the planet's most pressing issues. But how realistic is it that AI will help us create the world we dream of, and what are the ethical boundaries we must not cross? This chapter explores the potential of AI to address some of humanity's most critical challenges, focusing on its applications in climate change, global health, and socio-economic disparity. The clock is ticking on climate change, and the scientific community is growing more desperate by the day. AI, once relegated to the world of tech startups and corporate efficiency, is now seen as an unlikely but promising ally in the battle for a sustainable future. The rise of AI-powered solutions has already started to accelerate climate action in unexpected ways. Machine learning algorithms are being used to predict environmental changes and optimize energy consumption across industries. From smart grids that adjust energy use in real time to AI-powered systems that help reduce carbon footprints in manufacturing, the possibilities seem endless. One groundbreaking example is CarbonCure Technologies, which uses AI to optimize the process of injecting recycled carbon dioxide into concrete production, reducing the carbon emissions associated with manufacturing. Their system is not only helping to reduce emissions from one of the most carbon-intensive industries but also reusing CO2, turning a greenhouse gas into a valuable resource. AI-powered weather forecasting is also advancing rapidly, providing more accurate predictions of extreme weather events, which allows communities to better prepare for and mitigate the impact of natural disasters like hurricanes, droughts, and floods. These AI systems analyze vast amounts of data from satellite imagery, ocean sensors, and weather patterns, giving decision-makers critical insights that save lives and property. AI's potential to transform healthcare is nothing short of revolutionary. From diagnostics to drug discovery, AI is already being used to develop better treatments and improve patient outcomes. But the bigger question is whether AI can help solve the deep inequalities that exist in global health systems, especially in low-income countries where access to quality care is limited. AI-powered diagnostics have already been deployed in places like rural India, where access to doctors is scarce. Mobile health apps, powered by machine learning algorithms, can now analyze medical data like X-rays and blood tests to identify diseases like tuberculosis and cervical cancer at early stages, long before symptoms appear. In remote regions where healthcare infrastructure is minimal, these AI systems are enabling early detection and intervention that could otherwise be impossible. On a broader scale, AI is revolutionizing drug discovery. DeepMind, the AI research lab owned by Alphabet, Google's parent company, has made headlines for its AlphaFold project, which uses AI to predict the 3D structures of proteins. This breakthrough has the potential to accelerate drug development, helping researchers develop new treatments for diseases like cancer, Alzheimer's, and malaria. But AI's promise isn't just in treatment. It also offers a way to improve health systems globally by analyzing large-scale data from various hospitals and health agencies. Machine learning algorithms can predict health trends, optimize resource allocation, and even design personalized treatment plans, ensuring that health interventions are as efficient as possible. While much attention has been given to the potential of AI to improve industries and economies, there is also a growing interest in its role in addressing poverty and inequality. In fact, AI could be key to breaking down the barriers that perpetuate poverty, providing financial inclusion to the world's underserved populations. In countries where access to banking services is limited, AI-powered fintech solutions are providing mobile-based banking and microlending opportunities to millions of people. These solutions rely on AI to assess credit risk for individuals who may not have traditional credit scores, opening the door for millions of people in developing countries to start businesses, secure loans, and invest in their futures. Additionally, AI is being used to tackle problems of food scarcity. Precision agriculture, powered by AI, is enabling farmers to grow more food with fewer resources. AI-powered sensors and drones can monitor crop health, predict yields, and optimize irrigation, minimizing the waste of water and maximizing production. This technology is making farming more sustainable, especially in regions affected by climate change. In the fight for equality, AI is also being used to address systemic biases. By identifying and addressing discriminatory practices in hiring, education, and criminal justice, AI can contribute to leveling the playing field for marginalized groups. For example, AI systems are being used to screen job applications and identify bias in hiring practices, ensuring that individuals are evaluated based on merit rather than unconscious bias. While the potential of AI to tackle global issues is vast, there are also significant risks. As we delegate more tasks to AI, we must be cautious about over-reliance on algorithms, especially when it comes to issues as complex and nuanced as climate change, healthcare, and poverty. AI systems, while powerful, are not infallible. They rely on data, and if the data is incomplete, biased, or flawed, the solutions they produce could be harmful. For example, in healthcare, AI's reliance on data can perpetuate existing inequalities. If an AI system is trained on historical health data that reflects biases in medical care, it could unintentionally reinforce health disparities by failing to recognize the needs of underserved communities. Similarly, while AI can be used to optimize agricultural production, it could also lead to corporate control over food resources, leaving small-scale farmers without a fair share of the benefits. Moreover, AI's power to predict and influence behaviors presents ethical challenges in terms of privacy and surveillance. While AI can be used to track disease outbreaks or monitor environmental conditions, there is the risk of it being used for mass surveillance or to manipulate public opinion. As AI continues to shape the future of global change, it is clear that collaboration will be essential. Governments, tech companies, researchers, and activists must work together to ensure that AI is used responsibly and equitably. Ethical AI development will require transparency, accountability, and inclusivity, ensuring that the technology works for everyone, not just a select few. For Emma Nguyen, the conversation about AI's role in global change resonated deeply. She saw the potential of her work not just as a way to improve corporate efficiency but as an opportunity to make a lasting impact on society. As AI's power grew, so too did her sense of responsibility to ensure that the technology she developed would be used ethically, for the betterment of humanity. As the world moves deeper into the information age, education is facing a major shift. The way students learn, how teachers teach, and the very structure of educational systems are being redefined by artificial intelligence. The question now isn't whether AI will change education, it's how it will be implemented and who will benefit from it. Could AI be the key to unlocking a more personalized, efficient, and inclusive education system? In this chapter, we will explore how AI is transforming the classroom, enabling personalized learning and overcoming barriers to education, from the classroom walls to remote and underserved areas. And, importantly, we'll consider the ethical implications of AI in education, as well as the challenges that lie ahead in ensuring this technology is accessible to all. For years, the education system has struggled with a fundamental challenge: one-size-fits-all teaching. Traditional classrooms are structured to teach a group of students with varying abilities and learning styles in essentially the same way. While some thrive in this environment, others fall behind or feel disengaged. But AI holds the potential to break through this limitation by offering personalized learning experiences tailored to each student's unique needs. AI-powered education tools are capable of adapting lessons and assessments to individual learning styles. For example, platforms like Khan Academy and Duolingo use AI to track student progress, identify areas where they struggle, and adjust their lessons accordingly. These platforms don't just present information, they engage with students, offering feedback, additional practice, and tailored resources to help them improve. Emma Nguyen had recently encountered an AI learning platform designed specifically for young children, which integrated machine learning algorithms to assess each child's ability in real time. It adapted its content depending on the child's pace. If a student grasped a concept quickly, the AI would move on to more challenging material. If the student struggled, it would offer additional explanations and interactive exercises. This dynamic approach to learning was what Emma had always hoped for in education. AI could take the guesswork out of teaching by providing teachers with detailed reports on each student's progress. This data allowed for targeted interventions and more efficient use of time in the classroom. Teachers were no longer burdened with spending hours grading papers or trying to identify struggling students from vague impressions. They could simply rely on data provided by AI-powered systems. One of the most profound impacts of AI in education is its ability to bridge the gap in remote or underserved areas where access to quality education is limited. In many parts of the world, students face overwhelming barriers to learning, whether it's lack of access to trained teachers, poor infrastructure, or geographic isolation. AI-powered platforms can help fill these gaps. In rural areas, where qualified teachers are often in short supply, AI tutors can provide continuous learning support, even in subjects like mathematics, science, and languages. The AI can offer interactive lessons, personalized feedback, and even real-time tutoring, providing students with the resources they need to excel academically. In this sense, AI can bring education to students who would otherwise have limited opportunities for learning. Take, for example, the AI Literacy Project in Sub-Saharan Africa. Through the use of affordable tablets and smartphones, students are now able to access learning resources, including interactive textbooks, language programs, and even virtual science labs. In places where schools might be poorly equipped or overcrowded, these AI tools are serving as a lifeline for children who would otherwise be left behind. Moreover, AI-powered virtual classrooms have allowed schools to offer education to children even in the midst of disasters or crises. Whether it's a pandemic like COVID-19 or a natural disaster, AI tools can help maintain continuity in education, ensuring that students don't miss out on learning due to circumstances outside of their control. While AI's impact on K-12 education is remarkable, its influence on higher education is equally profound. In universities and colleges around the world, AI is being used to streamline administrative tasks, enhance research capabilities, and support students in more personalized ways. AI chatbots are already playing a major role in answering students' questions about administrative processes, course schedules, and financial aid. Instead of waiting in long lines or sifting through confusing websites, students can interact with AI-powered bots that give them instant responses, freeing up staff to focus on more complex issues. In the realm of academic research, AI is being used to analyze vast amounts of data, helping researchers find connections and insights that would be impossible to uncover manually. For instance, AI-driven tools can scan through hundreds of academic papers, pinpointing key trends and suggesting potential avenues for new research. In fields like medicine, AI is enabling researchers to simulate clinical trials, test new drug compounds, and even predict disease outbreaks. AI is also being used to enhance student support. Learning management systems, LMS, powered by AI can identify students who are at risk of dropping out and offer intervention strategies to keep them engaged. These systems track engagement metrics like assignment submissions, participation in discussions, and overall progress, offering instructors a comprehensive picture of each student's performance and providing them with actionable insights. With all the promises AI holds for transforming education, there are also serious ethical concerns that must be addressed. While AI can help personalize learning and improve accessibility, it can also create new inequalities if not implemented responsibly. For example, data privacy is a major concern. AI systems collect vast amounts of personal data, including academic performance, behavioral data, and even personal information. The more these systems learn about students, the more vulnerable that data becomes to exploitation. Schools and universities must ensure that student data is protected and that AI systems are designed with strong privacy safeguards. There is also the risk of algorithmic bias. If AI systems are trained on biased data or use flawed algorithms, they could unfairly favor certain students or groups. For instance, AI systems that recommend courses or assess student potential might be influenced by underlying biases, which could perpetuate existing inequalities in education. Moreover, there's the concern that AI could replace teachers rather than enhance their roles. AI is great at delivering personalized lessons and assessing student performance, but it can't replicate the human connection that is so critical in education. Teachers offer empathy, guidance, and inspiration, qualities that AI cannot easily replace. Thus, the future of education must involve a partnership between AI and human teachers, with AI serving as a tool that empowers teachers to provide better, more individualized support. As AI continues to make its way into the classroom, it's clear that the future of education will be highly personalized, more efficient, and more inclusive. However, with these opportunities comes a responsibility to ensure that AI is used ethically, transparently, and in ways that benefit all students, regardless of their background. Emma Nguyen was inspired by the potential AI had to revolutionize education, but she also understood the weight of its ethical implications. She realized that it was up to developers like her to create AI systems that were not only innovative but also fair and responsible. The power to shape the future of education rested in the hands of those who designed these systems, and with that power came an immense duty to protect the values that made education a force for good. In conclusion, the integration of AI into education is a revolutionary shift. While AI offers the potential to create personalized learning experiences, enhance accessibility, and increase efficiency, it is critical that we proceed with caution, ensuring that we protect privacy, equity, and ethical standards. The next generation of learners will face challenges and opportunities unlike any that came before. As AI continues to evolve, it will undoubtedly shape not just education, but the very fabric of society itself. And as Emma and others in the field of AI know, it is not just about how AI is used, but about ensuring it is used wisely and responsibly, for the benefit of all. This concludes our journey through the world of AI. What began as a conversation about one man's fine in a courtroom evolved into an exploration of how technology can fundamentally reshape the world. From ethics and responsibility to the endless possibilities of AI, the future is undeniably exciting. As we move forward, one thing is clear: AI will continue to be a transformative force in shaping the future of humanity. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?